Thanks for the introduction, Nera. We have a great panel coming up, and I'd like to invite my panelists on stage. We have Kathrin Buvac, President of Enterprise and Chief Strategy Officer from Nokia. Kathrin, welcome. Please. We have Rima Qureshi, Executive Vice President and Chief Strategy Officer, Verizon. We have Helmut Reisinger, the CEO of Orange Business Services. And finally, we have Andrew Penn, the CEO of Telstra. Thanks so much for joining me. We are talking about the opportunities that 5G will hopefully create for businesses in Europe and around the world. Kathrin, I want to start with you as a sort of an umbrella expert, because your company obviously provides all the equipment that's needed to implement 5G. What is your view on this new technology, and how can Europe, because you are a European company, you sell globally, but I want to take this kickoff in Europe. How can Europe really benefit from this new technology in Europe's companies to start with?
Well, thank you, Stefan, and thank you, I guess, for having us all here on the Bloomberg panel today. I would start and say that 5G, we've been talking about it for a very long time, and now the opportunity is really here. And what we've said already since a number of years is that 5G will enable the industrial revolution. So it's clear that 5G has to be a bit more, or a lot more, than mobility services. And I think when I look into talking with enterprise customers, I really do believe that these productivity gains that are spoken about are real. Operational efficiencies, process automation, all the way to dark factory operations to full autonomy, that is really what's coming. And maybe before we go to the deep depth of 5G technology, I think there are really two things. The one is the convergence of IT and OT technologies. Really, enterprises need to bring their enterprise IT services and the operations technology together. And that is not so easily done. And the other thing is, think about, we've heard Omar talk about digital. And I think about Amazon, Netflix, what they've done, transforming physical goods, books into ebooks, DVDs into streaming. That will not be possible, unfortunately, with Industry 4.0, meaning we cannot digitize a crane or a truck in a mine. That's just not possible. So what we will do is we will create these digital copies of the big machines or the robots, and that is what we call the digital twins. And what that has to do with 5G technology is that it all starts in connecting these sensors, these machines, these robots, these devices, the co-workers in the factories, in the mines, in the energy networks. And that is where ultimately we will need 5G technology because of the big promise of lower latencies or higher bandwidth capacities, et cetera. And without taking too much time from my dear colleagues, because you asked about Europe, I think there are a few geographies that are leading the industrial automation. I would say from our standpoint, it's clearly US. It is clearly Germany, where car manufacturing and many manufacturing opportunities are coming. It's Japan. And it's a few other geographies across the globe that are really leading the pack right now in terms of the fourth industrial revolution that we have to look into.
Yeah, and obviously industry jobs are very important to every economy around the world. Rima, of course, as well in the US, but how important are jobs and digitizing the industry to keep the industry alive in those countries?
I think obviously there is a concern of what, and I don't think this applies necessarily only to 5G. I think the issue of what is the future job market is an issue that we all have to think about. What are the jobs that will exist? What are the jobs that will disappear or change? I think all industries they can't stop the transformation. The transformation is happening. the transformation is something that we all need to be a part of, because if we don't embrace the transformation, we will be disrupted. So I think that's happening at various levels across various industries. The media industry is probably the first where we've seen that happen. Other industries are further down this chain, but they will all be transformed. So I think in that context, what will the new jobs look like? What are the new roles for humans, and what types of jobs will we have? What are the things that can be taken? I think the pace of change is so quick that we think we've laid the line in the sand on what humans can do and what technology can do, and that keeps shifting. But one thing that I think will probably not shift as much, and I think where the reality really is for our future, which is the augmentation of what machines can do to what humans can do. Already today, from a medical perspective, it is not possible for a human to absorb all of the medical advances, for example, in a particular field. So you would use a tool such as Watson to be able to digest all of the latest and greatest in terms of medical advances, but the empathy and the human aspect of what it means to understand that you have cancer or something, that will have to be provided by a human. And I think that is an example of how jobs are shifting. There is an aspect which we have to acknowledge will be done better by computers and by automation, and there is definitely a role for humans.
So the key message is 5G will assist people in doing their jobs and not necessarily replace people.
5G will transform industries, as industries are already in the process of transforming. 5G will enable new industries to be created, and I think 5G will enable new jobs to be created, but there will also be casualties along the way. But I think that isn't enough of a reason to say we shouldn't do it. We just have to figure out how we move along with the technology and what will be the needs of the new workforce.
Yeah. Helmut, 5G, I've heard, can also be an opportunity for European telecom companies. Your business enterprise divisions have in the past sort of had troubles, I'm not speaking of Orange in particular, but industry-wide. So can 5G supercharge your enterprise divisions in creating new products, in creating new services, and creating a bit more excitement about what 5G can bring to these companies?
Well, we at Orange Business Services, we believe that indeed the enterprise segment will be where 5G can fulfill its promise. And the promise will be in the light of the fact that the enterprises will be accountable in 2025 for the majority of data that will be generated. 2015 majority was us, the consumers, because we went all on smartphones, who generated most of the data. In 2025, 60% will be done by enterprises. This data needs to be captured. That's the IoT story and the promise of the 5G evolution. But it also then needs to be organized. It needs to be, coming back to Omar's discussion before, cyber secured end to end. This is not a hobby and a question if or yes. It has to be done, because otherwise, in the Internet of Enterprises, if you do not cyber secure end to end the intellectual property of a company, the value of a given enterprise goes down very quickly. And we strongly believe as well that this Internet of Enterprises is an ecosystem play. And the mass market, it's a mobile play by and large. In the enterprise, it's an ecosystem play. And that's why we, and here I speak about us as Europeans, we need to change a little bit in the way how we learn very quickly. And therefore, we put a lot of emphasis on co-innovation, because the story about IoT and where it will play, I'm not speaking about mass market IoT. And I think a key word in the 5G adventure will be coexistence. There will be coexistence of different techniques. We just are deploying a huge 3 million household IoT solution for Veolia Group in France. This is not based on 5G. LoRa is good enough. However, whenever it comes to video real-time kind of applications, be it in the medical sphere like Rima has just said, or be it when we together are looking at protecting fire brigades with drones, and you have HD video that you want to make sure that this is captured, there you need 5G. So co-innovation is key, coexistence, and I believe that at the end of the day, it will be embedded. So it's kind of, if you look at architecture, it's a kind of a keystone, a fantastic story that will be there, and we will have very targeted investments for the B2B space. And I think this transformation character is very critical for 5G. 3G, 4G were all about, or dominantly about connectivity, mobile connectivity. It was about devices. Here we talk about business transformation. This will challenge us because we need to understand the métier. As you have said, it's a topic of understanding IT meets the OT side. We need to understand the shop floor and how does a robot who has maybe as well a video application on it, how does he be steered and be applied into in Industry 4.0 environment?
Yeah. Let's talk about some of these exciting use cases. Andrew, you're operating in a very big country that's sparsely populated and has some really interesting industry applications. How can 5G supercharge some of these applications that are already used? The mining energy sectors are using 4G, they're using 3G, they're using Wi-Fi. How can 5G really make a difference there?
Well, I'd say a couple of things. I mean, the first thing I would say is that much as I look at the world through the telco sector, it's important that we look at the world through the lens of our customers. And to me, 5G is only part of the story. And I think the significance of 5G is that it is arriving at the same time as a number of other technologies are maturing. So cloud, AI, machine learning, software-defined networks, IoT, edge compute. That's the power of 5G. It's actually arriving at the same time as these other technologies. And you mentioned mining and resources. I mean, obviously Australia leads the world in many respects in tech, in mining and resources. One example would be Chevron, who've just spent $40 billion putting in a new gas train on the northwest coast of Australia. We've just run 500 kilometres of fibre for them out to their rigs offshore, because historically those rigs would take anywhere up to 2,000 people to run them. And their vision is to basically get those rigs down to be unmanned. Now, historically they would run the data transmission and the data backwards and forwards via satellite. That's not going to work in a world of robotics and automation. And so we've run the fibre out there, and as they bring that back on shore, they're looking at building basically a private network, 5G network, which actually then supports the sensors and the capturing of data and the processing of data and the local management of that effectively on shore. The other interesting thing, I think, as we look forward into the future, and if I use the use case of mining again, is it actually changes the whole paradigm of the sector, because historically what you've seen in mining, particularly in extraction, so say iron ore, one of the sort of dynamics that has happened is actually all of the equipment has got a lot bigger. So bigger trucks, bigger shovels, bigger conveyors. And why is that? Because one of the big productivity efficiencies is to reduce labour. So if we've only got one person driving a really big truck, that's a lot cheaper. Now, if you actually take the human labour out of the process, then all of a sudden, big doesn't necessarily become important. And actually, as it transpires in mining and extraction, actually small is more efficient. You need narrower roads, you need all sorts of other things, and you can change, you get more precision in extraction. And so it actually even starts to feed into the whole change in how you think about the supply chain. So I think the next 10 to 20 years is going to be amazing in terms of just the transformation that we have in all heavy industries. Because if you look at industries across the world, yes, there's lots of service industries that have been heavily digitised, but the heavy industry sector has not been heavily digitised yet, just because of the long-term capital lead times. But we will see industries completely transform, and we see a lot of that in Australia just because of the bias towards some of these industries, whether it's agri-tech or logistics or mining and resources. So there's some very cool stuff coming, but it's not just 5G on its own, it's 5G in conjunction with these other technologies.
So it's a combination of all of those technologies. When it comes to the rollout, we've already heard that some regions may be further ahead than others. The US is generally considered well ahead. And feel free to jump in, any of you. What do you think? What do you feel are the roadblocks to implementation, to faster implementation in your respective regions? What's still missing? What needs to be done?
So I can start. In terms of 5G rollout, we've already launched commercially fixed wireless access in 4 markets last October. So we've got a 5G live system up with customers, and I think it isn't the standard. It is a defined standard that Verizon had done, and Verizon had done that specifically because we wanted to take the opportunity to learn about the technology. We wanted to learn about the spectrum that we would be using. We wanted to understand what kind of use cases and do a little bit more work on how would we commercialize it and how would we generate revenue. So I think in the context of what will slow things down, spectrum availability, spectrum alignment, devices, commercial models. As Omar mentioned, how do you generate revenue? So it's great to say there's a great opportunity with business. I mean, one thing is clear. We will definitely have, the way that we're looking at it is relatively standard. There is a standard portion that we know we have to do, which is the next generation of technology. So that's the evolution. So 5G connectivity, 5G mobility, that we will do. Then we are looking at new use cases like fixed wireless access to use a different spectrum than had been done previously. So in that context, we're still waiting for the standards. We're still waiting for all of the devices to be there, but we're trying to learn as much as possible. And then what will slow things down potentially, but where there will be a revolutionary opportunity, is all of the new use cases that we talked about with mobile edge, all of the use cases of the transformation and the enterprise. But what we need to do is to work through how will we make money? How much of it should we be doing? How much of it should be done by other companies? How much should be done specifically by the enterprises in question? So I think that has to be a thoughtful process, and that's the process that we are in right now. We know we're going to do the connectivity. We know we're going to do the fixed wireless access, and now we're working through, similar to what we did with fixed wireless access and the Technology Forum 3 years ago, we are now looking at what are the use cases where we have a right to play and a right to win. And we know we will be able to generate revenue and create solutions that will be relevant for enterprise.
That's the case in the US, yeah, Helmut, in Europe?
I think that all the players, even here on the panel, we find the right solution for a given country context. And that might be different in the US, then there might be different in Australia, or for us in Europe. I think the Europeans, or we, are generally less good in marketing ourselves. Independent of geopolitics that are, of course, at question. But for example, we will also have 17 cities across Europe equipped with 5G. For us in the B2B space, what is the thing that drives us at the moment is really in our priority areas that we have defined, which is the e-health space, which is the Industry 4.0 space, which is smart cities. In these areas, we want to really have this co-innovation together with customers. So I like what you said, because that's also our approach, to learn as fast as possible what's the right model and business model and transformation aspect that in the end will be beneficial and drive outcome and value for the customer, and also, of course, for us. And here, I do believe in general, there will be a potential for a real renaissance of Europe, because yes, we might not have all the technological bricks that are there, maybe in China. However, there is the savoir-faire, there is the know-how to do industrial applications. And there, Europe should not be underestimated on this front.
Interesting. So an industrial renaissance powered by these new technologies such as 5G. And obviously, you will try to help bring that about. What about collaboration between telecom companies when building out 5G? Is that something that's needed because the cost of investment is high, because you want to do it as fast as possible? Or how's the?
I think every context might be different. We have done, as you have seen, and we have been criticized by the analysts for that, billions of investment into fiber. 5G was not there, so our strategy was in France, across Europe, to do as much as possible fiber already, but it will be coexistence. I'm reusing this word. Can there be potential cooperations? Yes, to be seen. All these models are being developed. 5G is one of the key cornerstones of potential solutions that we are all developing.
Nothing wrong in developing fiber.
I mean, I think the 5G business case stacks up purely on basically the economics of running a network. If I look at the demand for capacity coming around the corner at us, when I look at my network metrics, just investing in 5G, that increased capacity, speed and latency is going to stand up on its own, because I've got a provision for this. I've got a provision for the demand anyway. So I think the business case stacks up on its own. We're network ready. We've got more than 200 sites up across the country. We've got every single capital city and major regions already plumbed in with 5G. We'll be launching devices just as they become available. We're actually in market now with an offer on the Galaxy S10. You get a free upgrade to the 5G device as soon as it's available in the next few months. But I'll give you another use case, which is close to your heart, which is in broadcast. So Australians love their sports. So if you go to a stadium any weekend, there'll be tens of thousands of people watching the cricket or the footy or the rugby. And of course, for broadcasters, an event like that would mean shipping in big broadcast trucks with hundreds of kilometres of cables to helicopters to basically take aerial shots. All of that, basically with 5G, you get rid of, can all go wireless. You get the upload capacity with 5G, which is a big difference. We don't talk about upload as much as download. You can film using drones. I mean, there's incredible operational efficiencies just for the broadcast industry, which itself has, Rima said, is going through some challenges, the media industry. So I think it doesn't take a lot of imagination to think of many of the use cases coming.
Maybe just complementing really the colleagues here, and from our standpoint, taking a bit the global perspective, because we're touching in so many geographies in the world. I think one thing that is striking me is, and you said it so well, the industrial opportunity, right? It's 15 million industrial sites will be deployed in the next decade. We have today 6.5, 7 million base stations deployed in LTE worldwide. So it's more than double the number of industrial sites that we somehow all together need to deploy to enable IoT. And how are we going to do that? You mentioned spectrum availability, right? We have to be super creative, whether that is shared license, the CBRS, the 3.5, the large-scale carriers, subleasing spectrum, making money through that. It's so critical, and that also determines the which country, which geography, which enterprise customer will go first. Industrial devices, you mentioned that too. They will just not be as quickly available as the smartphones will be made available this year. So there's still a lag, and that just brings me to the one other point I wanted to make is 5G is a complete redefinition of the network, and we discussed about it, AI, edge cloud. But we have to bridge. We have to bridge now a couple of years, dare I say, for enterprise customers and take them 5G. And there the question is really because enterprise customers want to leverage productivity gains now, not tomorrow, like yesterday. And the question is really, how do we do that? And can we potentially provide private wireless networks with the help of our telco customers to enterprises that can then just be a software upgrade to 5G, but where we deploy industrial sites already today based on LTE technology, just because enterprise customers are wired a little bit differently than us consumers. Think about uplink video. You just mentioned sports. We're just so used to downlinking from tablets as consumers. We need a lot of uplink capacity. If we use email or if we browse, well, if for a millisecond the network doesn't work, it bothers us, but it's not the end of the world. But we need 6 nines reliability in the network in order to make sure we have the unmanned vehicles in the mines or the robots in the factories running precisely with the accuracy. So a lot of work needed still to get the 5G networks where they need to be, but it's really, really exciting times to build that infrastructure.
Yeah. Rima,
Sorry,
you
Rima, you wanted to.
Yeah, I think it goes back to the comment about network sharing and so on. And I think Omar alluded to this a little bit as well. I think probably 5G is going to be one of the first times that we're probably going to see quite a bit of divergence in the strategies of the telcos. Not everybody's going to approach the opportunity the same way. And I think you could see that definitely happening within the US. There's very different points of view of where the opportunities lie, whether it be on the consumer side, how much vertical integration do you do, how much relevance and importance do you put on the network, do you share your network, do you believe it's important and core to your capabilities to own it. I think, to your point, we're going to see a lot of different models for that. And it may not be the same, and maybe the regulatory environment, maybe the economic environment will create different strategies and different solutions depending on what you're faced with within your geography.
Yeah. Before we move on to Helmut, the U.S. president definitely seems to believe that 5G is crucial for the U.S. industry. Do you feel that you, as a U.S. company, have sort of an advantage because there's so much government backing to get this technology rolled out as quickly as possible, or?
I would say it's always good that we have an understanding of the importance of the technology. Would I qualify that as an advantage? No, I think there is an awareness of it. I think our objective, and keep in mind, we've been working with 5G now for many years, and this was with the previous administration as well as the current administration and any future administrations.
Right.
So I think from our perspective, we continue to do what we believe is right for us.
Yeah, and what you wanted to jump in?
I wanted to say something about this industrial opportunity. I believe there, as there will be so much data generated, and 5G will be a fantastic vehicle to take use of it. We have to just apply it in the correct way, and therefore it starts from collecting data, transporting, storing, and computing. So, for example, the fact what you said before, Andrew, that everything comes together now with cloud being ready. We are providing actually the cloud for Cricket Australia. Yeah? So, and then you need to analyze it, and then you need to co-create something, and then you need to cyber secure it. What I think is important for our industry as well, that we play, if I take a human example, we play with our two brains. There is a telco brain, and we have to have also an IT and integration brain. Because if we want to do what you have said before, that we are accompanying the journey from a customer to go from a factory shop floor application that is based on LTE, for example, then onto 5G, this needs a journey. It is a journey, and it needs a company. It needs consultancy effort, and it needs the integration capability, as well as, once again, the understanding of the nature of the business of the customer. I think there we will have to step up as an industry in order to really capture and harness the value of the 5G opportunity.
Yeah. Have European regulators done everything right in the past mainly when it comes to spectrum? I mean, spectrum is the currency you guys need to implement a working 5G network.
Well, let's put it this way. Have done everything right. There are different models. You have seen the Italian model, which probably is not Nobel Prize winning in the long run, but it's a model, and the rest we will see. I think Europe is learning as well, yeah. And I'm pretty sure that given the specificities of our markets, we will continue to provide best-in-class services as well to our enterprise customers.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much for a very interesting and exciting panel. We've certainly learned that the Western world hasn't lost in the race of 5G yet against the big Chinese giants that are always considered to be charging ahead. So lots of interesting use cases around the Western world, around Europe and Australia and the US. Thanks so much to my panel. And yeah, let's give them a warm round of applause. Thank you.